This is dHunter and my lovely wife Patricia. Today, we're going to be continuing our reviews of all the Star Trek films. Today we're going to be reviewing Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, which is arguably the best of all 13 Star Trek films. It's without a doubt the best of the original series films. Me personally, I think Star Trek First Contact is my favorite, as I'm a huge fan of the Next Generation era, the gray uniforms, and all the ships they introduced in that movie. This movie has a fantastic villain, Khan Noonien Singh, played by
Ricardo Montalban.
I always get his last name wrong, no matter how many times I try. That was one of the biggest complaints about the first film. Kind of dry acting, long, drawn out, boring, and no real villain, just a computer that was sent out from Earth 200 years ago and is now in turn going back to destroy the world. Khan is an excellent, memorable villain they brought back from the TV series. In this movie, it takes place 10 years after the motion picture, which is kind of interesting, as it's only 3 years later in real time. And they don't really do anything in the movie to show you it's 10 years later. Yes, the crew is definitely aged, and that's one of the themes of the film, but I don't think they ever give you a date or point of reference. Now, this movie is the beginning of a trilogy of films. Star Trek 2, 3, and 4 all flow together seamlessly, one after another. I also want to say the soundtrack is absolutely fantastic. I've been whistling this thing ever since we watched a movie last night. This movie starts off kind of similar to the motion picture in the sense of Captain Kirk is not the captain of the Enterprise. He's still an admiral, but he really wants to be the captain. It's been his goal in all the films. He's actually not the captain in Star Trek 1, 2, 3, or 4. It's until 5 that they get everything status quo, just like the TV show. So I've got a lot to say about this movie. Huge fan of Star Trek 2, so this video might be a little bit longer than the other ones. So first off, I do want to warn everybody, this review is going to be full of spoilers. I don't know if we exactly call it a spoiler in a movie that's 40 years old, but if you haven't seen it, first of all, you need to watch it because it's a fantastic film. And second of all, if you're worried about spoilers, they will be in here. So the movie starts off in a training exercise. It appears that Lieutenant Savick, played by Kirstie Alley, I think it's her first film she was ever actually in. She appears to be commanding the Enterprise. You have all the regular main characters: Chekhov, Sulu, Scotty, Bones, Spock, Uhura, and they do the Kobayashi Maru. It's a no-win scenario training exercise that all Starfleet cadets have to go through, and it's a huge thing referenced in a lot of different Star Trek shows and movies. Now, it's no secret to everybody, Leonard Nimoy's Spock dies at the end of the film, and I think that got leaked, and that was part of why they put this in here. They showed Spock die in the training exercise, so I think a lot of people that had read about that leak, they saw this, and like, oh, they just died in the training exercise. And they continue out with the movie to be surprised at the end. It's kind of an interesting concept. It seems like the Enterprise is retired and is simply used as a training vessel around the Earth solar system. Spock is currently the captain, and he has all these cadets under him. What do you think about the opening scene? I thought it was kind of an odd way to start things off. It seems like they're actually on a mission. Then they start getting attacked by the Klingons. They're all blowing up and all dying. A little overdramatic. I noticed they did reuse all the Klingon battlecruiser ship scenes from the beginning of Star Trek: A Motion Picture. And you know, it doesn't bother me too much. It's just a training exercise, not actual combat. Did you like that scene? Dislike it? I like it. I don't love it. What do you think?
I enjoyed it because you don't even know that it's a training exercise. You automatically think that's exactly what's happening. You don't even know who this person is who's in command, who's telling everyone what to do, and all of a sudden she's killing everyone. She's getting everyone killed. All of your main characters, everyone that you've grown to love over the years.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. We've actually watched this movie together, you and me, more than once, and we even watched it with our son, I don't know, 5 years ago. Watched it again. He seemed a little confused at the beginning, not really knowing what's going on, but then when everybody started dying, he realized it was not what was actually really happening. Of course, this ship doesn't have a holodeck, so they're using the actual ship for a training exercise. After the training mission is over, there's a dramatic entrance by William Shatner, introducing him to the film, and it's kind of a surprise that you find out none of this is actually really happening. Afterwards, Kirk is going back in the hallway. He's talking to Captain Spock. He asks him, "What are you going to do next?" And Spock tells him, "I have to go back to the Enterprise to prepare for your inspection." Kirk looks a little sad or hurt that Spock is captain of the Enterprise, gets to go to the ship and do all the things that Kirk wants to do. Spock asks Kirk what he's doing. He simply says, "I'm going home." I really like a line that Spock says here, and Kirk asks him, "Are you curious about the results of the training exercise?" Spock, in a very Vulcan fashion, says, "I'm understandably curious." Later, you see Kirk's house or apartment. He has all these antiques all over the place. His best friend Bones comes over. It's Kirk's birthday right now. Getting quite a bit older at this point. McCoy comes over. They drink a bottle of Romulan ale together. A nice little Easter egg, as Romulan ale is illegal in the Federation, and that's referenced countless times in the other shows. Although I believe by the end of Deep Space Nine, it's actually legal at that point due to their alliance with the Romulan Empire. Getting a little off topic, but it's kind of a depressing, sad scene. McCoy says something like, "God damn it, Jim. Other people have birthdays. Why are we treating yours like a funeral?" And it's really because Kirk's an admiral. He's not really happy about being part of the training program at Starfleet Command. He wants his ship back, and it's always been that way ever since he passed command of the Enterprise to William Decker more than 10 years ago. McCoy makes a comment, "Get your command back before it's too late, before you become a fossil like all these things in your house." Kind of sets a tone of the film, the themes of the film, getting older, things changing. After that point, we introduced to a brand new Federation ship. The USS Reliant comes by. This is the first time they showed a new class of starship. This is a Miranda-class ship. I'm a huge fan of the different ships. My wife will tell you, when we watch the TV shows together, it can be very boring, as I'll pause it. My son and I will be naming all the ships, sometimes watching it in slow motion. I enjoyed watching the movie last night, and I asked both of them, "Hey, what was the registry on that ship?" And my son said, "NCC 18CC4. I was very pleased that he caught that, because I wasn't paying attention. It's a cool ship. It has a similar saucer-type section, but the rest of it is totally different. I like seeing a little bit of variety in the ships. In the original show, all we saw was Constitution-class ships, and a bunch of them, and they all looked exactly the same, which sort of makes sense, but in general, Star Trek has a big variety of ships in their fleets. The Reliant was commanded by Captain Terrell, and the first officer was Commander Pavel Chekhov. Kind of cool to see them moving on past the Enterprise, doing other things with their career, advancing their rank, etc. It's not realistic for them to stay on the Enterprise for 20 years, that's for sure. We're also introduced to a bunch of scientists on a space station called Regular One. They're working on a huge project called Genesis. It creates life out of a lifeless planet. They can shoot the Genesis missile onto a moon, and in a week or so, it'll completely revamp the moon and have it support life, plant life, animal life, and eventually humans could go there. It's their solution to overpopulation, etc., etc. But the big concern here is, if they were to fire that missile onto a populated planet, it would wipe out the population and pretty much start it over. So this thing could be manipulated into a weapon, as you'll see later in the film. One really interesting thing I found about the scientists is they're scared of Starfleet. Kirk's son, he makes a comment how in the past scientists have always been pawns of the military. They're really worried what Starfleet might do if they get their hands on Genesis. I find that very interesting because Starfleet is always the goody two-shoes, the protectors of the galaxy, etc. But you can see how some people that don't deal with Starfleet very often are kind of nervous about it. They have this huge scientific discovery that could be perverted into a weapon. I just thought that was a very interesting take on things. What do you think about the scientists? Regular One, Reliant, all that stuff, Genesis.
It's a wonderful idea.
It's cool. Very Star Trek-y type thing, trying to revamp planets and create new life, etc. But it definitely doesn't quite go according to plan.
No.
At this point, the Reliant captain and first officer go down to a planet called Ceti Alpha 6. They're trying to test the Genesis weapon there. It's a planet that's uninhabited, but they detect a tiny bit of life there. They're thinking maybe it's a microbe or something very small they can transplant. as the life signs are very faint and weak. Very unlike Star Trek, or I guess like the old show, they send down the captain and the first officer by themselves. I believe that would be against Starfleet regulations. But that's what they did in the old show all the time. It was always Kirk, Bones, Spock, maybe a couple of red shirts going down to the planet. In the later shows, they definitely make it a point. If they don't send down the captain and the first officer on a away mission ever, the captain almost never actually goes. They go down to SETI Alpha 6. Huge sandstorms going on. The planet seems uninhabitable. Very hostile. As they're moving around, they're not finding any life. Eventually they see these cargo containers, and they're very surprised, as they were expecting to find pretty much nothing there, or something very minuscule. They go inside, and you can tell people have been living there for a long time. There's a checkers board, all kind of gear. Chekhov looks at a little strap there, and it has the logo of the ship. SS Botany Bay. Botany Bay? Botany Bay? And you can see him remembering. He's like, we have to get out of here now. They put their helmets back on, they go outside, and are immediately stopped by Khan and his augments. They take them back inside the ship. Khan is genetically engineered, super strength, superior intellect. They don't really show you too much in the film, but there's a part here where he picks up Chekhov and lifts him in the air. Kind of cool, showing off their super strength. He makes a kind of funny comment. He says to the captain, "You I do not recognize." He looks at Chekhov, "But you I never forget a face. I remember you, Chekhov." The funny thing is, Chekhov wasn't even on the Enterprise in the old show until season 2. When Spacey came on, that actor wasn't even part of the crew. I guess it's supposed to be that he was on the ship, just off screen, and you know, that works for me. Chekhov is very surprised they're there, and then Khan, with his superior intellect, figures out, you guys aren't even here to check on me. You guys thought this was SETI Alpha 6, but this is SETI Alpha 5. Apparently SETI Alpha 6 exploded, messed up the orbit of SETI Alpha 5, and totally changed the climate and the hospitability of the planet. It's very hostile at this point, and a lot of the augments have died. Khan mentions more than half of them have passed away, including his beloved wife, and she actually wasn't an augment. Next, Khan takes the 2 Starfleet officers, shows them the only living creature on SETI Alpha 5, and it's this, I don't know, reptile-looking thing, a little giant bug. He opens it, takes some larvae out of his back, and this scene has always resonated with me since I was a kid. These little earwig things. Every time I see an earwig in real life, at least that's what I call them, those little crawly bugs with little pinchers in the front, I gotta smash the hell out of them things. Always freak me out. I think they're gonna go in my ear and take over. He tells them these things will wrap around your brain, make you very susceptible to suggestion, pretty much mind control you. So he now has the first officer and the captain of the Reliant under his control. When talking to the captain, he hears them mention Admiral Kirk, and frankly that pisses Khan off. Kirk got promoted, and Khan is pissed with Kirk because Kirk left them there. Really? It was a nice thing Kirk did. Kirk could have brought them to go to prison, but he decided to give them a chance to make their own sort of community and culture on this planet. But Khan is mad because Kirk never checked on them. Which is kind of interesting. At the end of Space Seed, they mentioned, hey, if we check on them in a while, what would come out of this? What kind of civilization would come out of there? But I guess they never gave it another thought. I imagine Kirk actually probably didn't even tell his commanding officers what happened, because I can't imagine they gave him the blessing to just drop them off there. I don't know. That's all stuff off screen. Something to think about. At this point, the earwigs go inside them, and now Khan has his way off the planet. Now Khan has Chekhov contact Regular One and all the scientists there. We have Kara Marcus. She's an old fling of Kirk's. Chekhov tells them that Starfleet is going to come and take Genesis and all related materials. Kara Marcus is furious as that was not the arrangement with Starfleet. She tells them flat out she is not going to allow anyone who is not authorized to take Genesis materials. At this point, the conversation's over. He says he's going there. She does ask him who gave the order. He mentions, these orders come straight from Admiral Kirk. And then Chekhov says to Khan, you do realize they will contact Admiral Kirk to confirm the orders. And that was all part of Khan's plan. He wants to lure Kirk out and get revenge. Then back to the Enterprise. Kirk's doing his inspection. Not something he really enjoys. He's in engineering, talking to Scotty, meeting the cadets. They ask him if he's going to continue the inspection. He's just like, no, get it over with. He goes to the bridge. He watches Spock allow Lieutenant Savick to take them on a space dock. They still seem a little bit nervous that she's never done this before. At this point, Carol Marcus tries to contact Kirk. She asks him why he's taking Genesis. Something's wrong with communications. It's being jammed at the source, presumably the Reliant jamming regular one's communications. So she can see Kirk, but can't hear him. He's very nervous about Genesis being taken over. No one else on the ship seems to know what it is, besides Kirk. He's an admiral, so he's privy to some information like that. He ends up taking Spock and McCoy to his quarters, shows them what Genesis is, and they all realize this can't go into the wrong hands. At this point, Kirk has a conversation with Spock, and I absolutely love this scene. Spock is encouraging him to take command. Kirk's like, no, it's probably nothing, just jam communications, nothing to worry about. You command the ship, Spock. And Spock says something like, you operate with a false assumption that I've pride you're going to hurt. I'm a Vulcan. I don't have that emotion. It's only logical for you to take command of the Enterprise. You're the most senior officer, and this is what you're good at, commanding a starship. Anything else is a waste of resources. And Kirk, having the desire to take command, as always, ends up doing it. He contacts Starfleet. They allow the Enterprise to go to regular one, check it out, and Kirk does it in command. I personally love that scene with Spock where he's talking about his quarters. Spock pretending to be an emotionless Vulcan, which he is, but he knows this is what Kirk really wants, and he's encouraging him to take over the ship. Kirk doesn't want to do it. He remembers what happened with Decker, how mad it made Decker, and he doesn't want to offend Spock. But little does he know, or I guess he does know, Spock's a Vulcan and won't get offended. But not only that, deep down, he's really Jim's friend. What do you think about the scene? I personally just love the dry, emotionless delivery that Leonard McCoy gives. Works perfect, especially if you understand Vulcans and the relationship between Spock and Kirk.
It's only logical. He's the most senior officer. He has the most knowledge. He has the most experience.
Well, like you said, anything else would be a waste of resources.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, the Enterprise arrives at Regular One. They see one of their sister ships, another Starfleet vessel, the USS Reliant, so it doesn't cause them any concern. But when they try to hail them, Reliant tells them, through, some sort of text message, that they are unable to use the view screen, and there's some damage to their ship. When the Enterprise scans that part, it seems to be functioning properly, causing some suspicion. But they're a fellow member of Starfleet, so nothing to worry about. As they're approaching, Lieutenant Savick starts to quote protocol to the Admiral. Spock interrupts her and says the Admiral's well aware of protocol. She started to tell him it is regulation to raise shields when you cannot come in contact with another vessel. But they're both a member of Starfleet, so Kirk, of course, being the rogue that he is, decides not to raise his shields, and it costs the lives of a ton of cadets. As they approach the Reliant raises their shields, raises their weapons. Kirk tries to quickly get the shields up, but he's too late. Reliant fires at the center of the Enterprise, really damaging the ship, taking their weapons offline, their shields, their engines. Enterprise is pretty much disabled at this point, and they're so confused they don't understand why another Starfleet vessel is firing on them. At this point, they get hailed. Uhura tells Kirk something like, the Reliant is messaging you. They want to discuss the terms of your surrender. Kirk's in shock. The view screen comes on. It is Khan. Very dramatic, surprising introduction. Kirk is speechless. Khan is pleased that he remembers him, but he blames him for the death of all his fellow augments, his wife, leaving them stranded there, etc. At this point, Enterprise disabled. Reliant has the upper hand. He basically tells them he's got 2 minutes to turn over all materials about Genesis. Kirk pretends like he doesn't know what he's talking about, but Khan, of course, knows better. Kirk says he needs some time, bridges in pieces, computers aren't working. Khan gives them, I believe, 1 minute to transfer the data. At this point, Kirk and Spock are talking about how can they get the Reliant. They have a list of all the prefix codes of the other ships. That way, they can force them to shut their shields off. Just in the nick of time, they do that. Reliant shields go down. Enterprise has enough energy for a little volley of phasers, and they mess the Reliant up real bad. At this point, Khan has to withdraw. His people are telling him, the Enterprise is disabled, they aren't going anywhere. Let's back out, and we'll go back when our weapons and shields are restored. It's a great scene. I believe Kirk and Khan never actually had any scenes where they acted together. It was all remotely. The two characters never physically came in contact during this film. Kind of cool. Only time they ever talk is at the view screen. And just the mystery, not understanding why the Reliant's fire on them, and then finding out it's Khan. You can just see in Kirk's eyes the shock. Very well done. Very suspenseful. And the ship battles are actually pretty good. They still hold up pretty nicely 40 years later. I mean, not perfect. What do you think about the scene? I think it's fantastic. One of the best scenes in the film.
I almost felt like Captain Kirk was like, "Oh my gosh, you're okay? You're okay? Oh, thank goodness, you're okay!" Like, almost like they're friends, they're acquaintances, they know, and he's just almost excited to see him for a second, out of concern. But yeah, and then they fight and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I understand Khan blaming Kirk for the death of his wife and the other augments. But honestly, Kirk was pretty nice to them. He was going to take them to a starbase and really turn them over to Starfleet to put them in prison. And he decided to let them have their own planet and make their own civilization and rule their own whole world. Of course, things did not go according to plan, and a bunch of people died. Then,
He didn't go back and check on them.
Which is kind of interesting, because they sure talked about that at the end of Space Seed. But I get it, Universe is a big place. Everyone has their assigned duties. Next, some members of the Enterprise crew beam down to the Regular One station. They want to see what's going on with Genesis and the scientists. Now, you find an uncharacteristic, sort of bloody scene here. All the scientists seem to be killed. They're hanging upside down, almost like something out of Predator, but they're not skinned. Kirk moves around. They're all cutting all the people down. They do find out in the transporter room that some people have beamed down to the planet. So, of course, the crew beams down to follow up, see what's going on.
But they had found Chekhov and the captain.
Were they on the station? Is that where
they were
found
on
them?
the station, yes.
Gotcha. So they take them down with them. Of course, they're Starfleet officers. They're going to help them. Mm-hmm. One big happy family. They beam down together. They do find some scientists who immediately attack them. They think it's Starfleet that killed all the other scientists, which of course is not what happened. You have a nice little scene between David, which is Kirk's son, but Kirk doesn't know at the time. He's trying to stab Kirk with a knife. They're fighting. Kirk, of course, gets the upper hand, being the fighter that he is. Then he sees Carol Marcus' old fling, and he puts the two and two together, realizes that it's his son, and he's really not taking it well. He's kind of upset, kind of depressed, sitting in the corner by himself. She starts talking to him, and he's like, "Why didn't you tell me?" She's like, "I didn't want him going around with you all over the galaxy. I wanted him in my life, and we were never going to be together." But I think Kirk gets it.
But they had made an agreement. He said, "I did what you told me to."
Yeah, stayed out of your life. But I don't think she maybe didn't tell him it was his son, although he knew who David was. He said,
yeah.
"This is David." So I don't know if he knew it was his... I think he had to have known it was his son.
He knew, yeah.
But, he was upset, I guess, seeing his 20-year-old son or
25-year-old, yeah.
Which they actually did a pretty good job with the actor. They took someone who kind of has curly hair, like William Shatner, at least his toupee at this point, and blonde hair, like Carol Marcus. Did a good job of picking an actor that looked like could be the offspring of the two of them. Mm-hmm. So they go down to the planet, and Carol Marcus explained to them how Genesis works. She shows them the Genesis cave, huge, luscious plant life, tons of food there. She said basically they could live their entire life there and they'd be just fine. At this point, Kirk's talking to Spock. Their communications are being monitored, and they're well aware of this by Khan. They're talking about how bad off the Enterprise is. Kirk kind of implies they're going to be talking in code. Days or hours, hours or days. So when he talks to Spock, Spock mentions it's going to take him 2 days to get enough power to beam them back up, get shields, etc. And Kirk basically tells him, go back to the starbase, get some help. So Khan is listening to all this, and he thinks the Enterprise left them down there. At this point, Khan decides to activate his 2 people, the captain and the first officer of the Reliant. Captain pulls out a phaser, aims it at Kirk. Pretty surprising to everyone, as they had no idea this was going to happen. The captain is really fighting it. He doesn't want to shoot Admiral Kirk. He ends up vaporizing himself instead of killing Kirk, and Khan is ordering him the whole time to do this. A huge struggle, internal struggle, and then next he turns to Chekhov, tells him to kill the captain. Chekhov also fights so hard, he pretty much passes out, collapses. His little earwig comes out, they vaporize it. And Khan, at this point, thinks he has killed Kirk. Kirk gets on the communications. Basically, he's like, Khan, I'm still here. Khan's in shock. You can kind of see his face, hear his voice. Kirk mentions, well, you managed to kill just about everybody else, but like a poor marksman, you keep missing the target. And he's trying so hard to lure Khan to go down to the planet because he knows it's the only way he has any chance of winning, to fight Khan. And Khan will beat him senseless in a fight. He is augmented. He has, 5 times his strength or whatnot. But if Kirk doesn't get Khan to go down, Khan's going to escape, get away. He steals Genesis. Kirk is trying so hard to get him to go down there, because if he gets that Genesis weapon, he could destroy an entire planet. But Khan is intelligent. He's not going to fall for it. Even though it's tempting, his lust for revenge almost outweighs his intellect. And then you have this iconic scene where Khan is mentioning to him, oh no, Kirk, I've done something to you far worse than death. I've marooned you on this planet just like you did to me. And then he starts to leave, and Kirk, acting is so good at this part, has that iconic scene where he just yells, Khan! So well done. He's shaking, he's so angry. And what's weird about this, it's all acting. And not by William Shatner, by Kirk. He knows the Enterprise is going to come get them in a couple hours because their little code with Spock. But he plays the part so good and totally fools Khan. I love that part. What do you think? I mean, that is iconic, the Khan thing. You tell me you haven't seen a million memes out there and it redone.
Even if you've never seen the movie, you know that part. You've heard that part. You've heard other people mimic that part. So.
Yeah, I mean, other movies, they're screaming something. It just gives you an aerial view. So well done. And just the way they lead up to it, the way Khan is talking crap to him, etc. It's all on point. Very, very well done. Probably my favorite scene in the movie. Just the build up to it. Excellent. Top notch. And William Shatner, great acting. A lot better than the dryness in the motion picture. So Kirk and the other Starfleet officers are on this planet. It seems hopeless, like they're never going to get picked up. And then out of nowhere, Kirk pulls out his communicator, right on schedule. Spock, are you there? Yes, sir. We have partial power, ready to beam you out. And everyone looks so surprised. They all get beamed up to the Enterprise. They get saved. They know that some of the Reliance crew has left a regular one, so they're going to go back for them later. At this point, they need to catch Khan and get the Genesis device out of his hands. Millions, possibly billions of lives will be at stake. Kirk starts heading to the Mutara Nebula. Khan is following him. Khan has this thirst for revenge. He has a great line where he talks about, have you ever heard the Klingon proverb that revenge is a dish best served cold? And it is very cold in space. Kirk starts to go to the nebula. Khan's people are telling him, you got what you want. We have a ship. You have Genesis. Let's take this and go. Leave this place. And Khan says, no, no, no. I will go all around the universe to catch Kirk. A really cool line. I couldn't quote it exactly. But he's thirst for revenge blinds him to what would be better for him and his people. Kirk goes into the nebula, and Khan and his people, they know the sensors are not going to work in there. But Kirk starts taunting him. Reliant slows down. Kirk says, "There you are, superior intellect. Can't catch me, I'm going to the nebula." And Khan, furious, goes full impulse, falls into the nebula. Neither ship have sensors. They're just shooting blind at each other. Nice sort of game of cat and mouse there. Before they got to the nebula, Reliant gets a few more shots off on the Enterprise. They hit them in the exact same place they hit them before, causing some severe damage. Kirk's on the bridge, calling the shots, and doesn't really know what's going on in engineering at the time. In engineering, the damage is so severe, the warp core is becoming unstable, they're going to lose the ship. Spock realizes what's going on, and goes down to engineering to lend a hand.
He realizes that his Vulcan physiology is the only thing that can keep him from the radiation. Humans wouldn't be able to go into the area that needs to be worked on and survive long enough to complete the process.
Yeah, I like when he goes down there. He sees Scotty is injured. McCoy's looking after him. McCoy tells him, "You can't go in there, you'll die." And he says, "Well, how's Mr. Spock?" "Oh, he's in no condition to..." Then he Vulcan neck pinches McCoy, takes him out, quickly mind melds with him. I believe he's putting his Katra into him, which is sort of like the Vulcan's essence or soul. That gets followed up in the next movie, and it's pretty cool. We just finished Enterprise, and they introduced the Katra in Season 4 there. So, Spock in this iconic scene goes into the warp reactor, starts to move some stuff around, fix it, but of course, he's exposed to this radiation, and it's really messing him up. Meanwhile, on the bridge, Kirk, Khan are there. They end up getting a great shot on Khan, totally mess up the ship, totally mess up the bridge. Khan is all fucked up, his face all messed up on the side, his arm's not working, his entire crew is dead, he's the only one left. But he has time to activate Genesis. Of course, the Enterprise is really messed up, no warp, and they know if Genesis goes off, they cannot get away fast enough. They will be destroyed. That's why Spock is down there trying to fix the warp core. He knows if he doesn't do it, the ship will die. And as Vulcans always say, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few.
Mm-hmm.
Or the one. Enterprise finally gets warp speed, the last possible second. They get out of there, Reliant blows up, and they're safe. Kirk's very pleased, knows what a good job he did, but he looks over at his science station to the empty chair. McCoy calls the bridge, says, "Kirk, you better get down here." He gets down to engineering. He sees Spock behind this thick glass window. He goes to open the door and save his friend, but McCoy and the other officers hold him back. "Don't do it! You'll flood the whole chamber!" And it's a really sad scene. Now, my wife and I have watched this movie. This is probably the third time we've watched it together. I remember like it was yesterday when she watched this the first time. And she obviously didn't remember Star Trek 3, 4, 5, and 6. I looked over and she was crying like a baby. And it has an effect on you. It's very well done. Acting is on point. It's excellent. Spock's skin is all messed up.
He's blind.
Yeah, I know. Kirk makes a comment. "He's gonna die," and Scotty says, "He's dead already." And they have this great scene where they're looking at each other through the thick glass. Spock mentions, "I am, and always will be, your friend." They hold up the Vulcan symbol on the glass. And it is really sad. Spock dies. One of the most beloved characters in all of Star Trek. He does save the ship. His death had a lot of meaning behind it. And Kirk is absolutely sad and depressed, as most of the audience are at this point too. Next we proceed to Spock's funeral scene. And honestly, I don't really understand why in all Star Trek they always put people's corpses in a photon torpedo and shoot out into space. It seems like there should be some regulation against that. Doesn't really make a lot of sense just to put them in a casing and shoot them out into space, but whatever. They have the funeral. All the crew's there, and Kirk says something like, of all the souls I've encountered, his was the most human, and he's holding back tears. I can kind of imagine Savick thinking, why do you have to be so offensive during his funeral? So, of course, they fire out the torpedo, and it looks like it goes toward the Genesis planet. Get a little sort of glimmer of light as it goes around the planet, kind of giving you a little bit of hope. Maybe, just maybe, he'll be back. Then it goes to the planet. You see the torpedo landed there. Leading into Star Trek 3. Can't wait to get to that film next.
It's just amazing that Genesis, they were in a nebula. Genesis went off. The nebula is completely destroyed because everything is killed when Genesis goes off. But then all of a sudden creates an entire new planet on its own.
I believe...
And then creates life on it.
I believe it actually took the nebula itself and created the planet from the nebula. It has to have some sort of material to create life with. And it worked out great. You find in the next film that Genesis is forbidden, it's off limits, it's a huge controversial topic. A lot of different species are mad about this. We'll get to that soon, though. And so that concludes the film. It's a fantastic film, fantastic score, good effects, great acting. Love the film, love the fact that it continues off Space Seed, one episode of the old show. And I'll tell you my experience with Star Trek 2. I had not seen Space Seed when I first Star Trek 2 as a kid. It was only years later that I finally got to see the show, and it made a ton of sense when you put two and two together. I love this film. I like the new uniforms. I like that they set the tone. A lot more consistent. Star Trek 2 through 6. A lot of consistency. Visually. The first one is a lot different, but it is 10 years later. If I were to rate this film, I'm going to give it a very solid 8 out of 10. Hell, I'd probably give it an 8.5 out of 10. It's a very good movie. Villain's excellent. The heroes are excellent. The acting is better. The pacing is better. It's not long, drawn out, and boring. And don't get me wrong, I like Star Trek the Motion Picture, but I love Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. What are your thoughts?
I would say probably like 8.5, 9.
That's absolutely fantastic.
It is. It's wonderful.
I was looking forward to watching this for a long time. We watched a motion picture, and I was really excited to put on Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. It's been a while, and I'm looking forward to watching the next one, but not as much as I was looking forward to this one. So, this is dHunter, my lovely wife Patricia. Thank you guys for watching this video. If you liked the video, press like below. If you have anything to want to say with the video, add to the comment section. If you want to see additional movie or action figure reviews from me, press subscribe. I do appreciate when you do that. So, once again, this is dHunter. Live long and prosper.